Just a few minutes ago, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi did address the U.S. Congress. His second speech before the U.S. Congress and before the members. He was invited by the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and also the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. He did make his 1.5 hour long speech. He was greeted by the senators there. There was a clear admiration of the Indian Prime Minister by the senators, where they ululated and also chanted Modi, Modi, Modi as he made his way into the chamber. These are some of the points that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi did make before the members of the Congress. He did start by saying that he is happy to help out whenever the United States or the Congress needs a strong bipartisan consensus. The partnership between the United States and India augurs well for the future of democracy, says the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister also said India is home to all faiths in the world, and India celebrated all of them. In India, he added, that diversity is a natural way of life. The Prime Minister's motto reverberated before the Congress, where he says, when India grows, the whole world grows, and that the vision of together for everyone's growth, with everyone's trust and everyone's efforts. The Indian Prime Minister did also speak about the empowerment of women and the girl child, where he says empowering women transforms every nation. He did speak about technology and the young population in India, which he says is the bulk of the 1.4 billion people in India. He says younger generation is making India a hub of technology. Speaking about technology, he says technology will determine the security, prosperity, and leadership in the 21st century. Talking about the war in Ukraine, which has been a bone of contention and also a topic that has been going on for a year and some months. He says this is an era of dialogue and diplomacy and not war. And speaking about the Indo-Pacific, the Indian Prime Minister did say that the presence of the Quad grouping is helping foster peace in the region. He says Quad has emerged
Members of Congress,
as a major force of good for the region. Talking about terrorism, the Prime Minister says the world must overcome all such forces sponsoring and exporting terror. Giving a voice to the global South is the way forward, and to do that, the Indian Prime Minister believes that the African Union should be given full membership of the G20. Let's talk more about the Indian Prime Minister's tour of the United States, and joining us right now is our correspondent, Siddhant Sabor. Siddhant, the trip is almost over, and also I can see we have our correspondent from New York as well. Siddhant, I will start with you. Talking about the trip, it's almost over. What can we expect today going forward?
Well, Eric, to sum it up, it was a packed morning, packed afternoon, and it will be a just address the U.S. Congress, as you pointed out, the key points of his address. But essentially, as we have been saying, there will be a specific focus on how India and U.S. have come closer, and we have the south lawns of the White House, where we were present earlier today, and how essentially we saw a celebration of sorts with the members of the diaspora present in full force, or whether it's the Congress where the U.S. Congress member greeted the Indian Prime Minister warmly. Now, joint statement has been released detailing as to the key outcomes, but one, if I can sum up, because joint statement is a pretty long statement, one thing has been focused is how engagement can be increased between India and the United States, especially when it comes to people relationship. We know that consulates will be opened, American consulates in Ahmedabad and other cities in India, and India will be opening its consulate in Seattle. That shows that how there has been eagerness from both sides to engage. Right. Secondly, of course, is the defense partnership. We have seen both sides eager on co-production of defense, something that was pointed out during the joint statement as well, that was released just a short while ago.
Siddhant Sibal, stay with me. Let me go now to Susan Teherani. Susan Teherani, good to see you. A lot has been said both by the Prime Minister of India and also the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Actually, Joe Biden did say that both America and India are keen on creating and innovating. This partnership and these bilaterals between the two Prime Minister, the Prime Minister and also the President of the United States, what is the symbolism of this tour by the Prime Minister to the United States?
As you rightly mentioned, Eric, it is about partnership, unity, and he also, as you mentioned, Prime Minister Modi, during his address to Congress, said that I agree with President Biden. India-U.S. relationships are defining partnerships of the century. So then you have the two biggest democracies coming together in Washington, and this has been really the cornerstone of President Biden's entire foreign policy apparatus and agenda: democracy against autocracy. And so the more democratic countries he gets on his side, first of all, it's better strategically for the United States, and also it's better for the international community as well. And we saw Prime Minister Modi allude to that as well. Time and again, he drew parallels between democratic values in India and democratic values here in the United States. And he really focused a lot on democracy. At one point, he said there must be a contest of ideas at home, but we must come as one when we talk about our nations. This was exactly he knows what's happening in the United States with the polarized system that we have right now of ideas. And of course, that is also in India. He said in democracies, this happens at home. But just the fact that he said when we have a shared vision and a goal, we must come together. Again, it's that symbolism that you talk about, that these two countries really have come a long way in their relationship.
Susan Teherani, I'll come back to you. Siddhant Sibal, the Indian Prime Minister did mention something that is very critical, not only in the Indo-Pacific, but also in the world. He was talking about terrorism in the Congress. He says that the world must overcome all such forces sponsoring and even exporting terror. Why do you think it was crucial for the Prime Minister to mention this topic before the Congress?
Well, India's policies has been to highlight how cross-border terrorism has been a big worry, and also, of course, the issues related to cross-border terrorism and terrorism in general. Now, India has been a major victim of terrorism, most of them being planned by Pakistan. 26/11, the perpetrators continue to roam freely in Pakistan, and India has been several times calling that Pakistan should take action, but there hasn't been any change in the position of Islamabad. But one thing India has been able to do is to form a consensus globally, especially at the FATF, that countries who have been indulging in terrorism should be penalized in terms of some kind of sanctions, to use the phrase, on them. Pakistan was on the grey list for a significant time, and we saw the impact on its economy. Now, focus from the Indian and the American side has been on listing of Pakistani terrorists. We just saw earlier this week Sajid Mir, the terrorist who was responsible for the 2611, the Chinese again had blocked his listing at the UNSC. But essentially, it also shows that how India and the US are coming together in terms of listing, in terms of counter-terror cooperation, in terms of information sharing as well. And with what today happened, a day which of course goes in history as a milestone day in India-US relationship, it looks like anti-terror cooperation between the two countries is going to be something that will see significant movement both sides.
Susan, coming back to you, there was also talk about cooperation between America and also India when it comes to education, where the Indian Prime Minister did say that they are working on modalities to improve visa access to students to come, or Indian students to go and study in America. He also said that the Indian government is working on a plan to increase the consulates in America. Some of these issues that the Prime Minister did indicate while giving that press conference with the President, what do they indicate going forward? Because this has been a topic of discussion for quite a while now.
Yeah, it has been, and it's been an issue that's been discussed on lower levels, for example, between Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and S.J. Shankar of India. But I think when Prime Minister Modi gets behind the podium and talks about this, as well as talking about, for example, the fact that long pending trade-related issues were also discussed with President Biden, you realize that they really did have a frank conversation on some of the sticking points between the two sides. And this is something that's important for India. He brought it up, but I think it was very interesting that he also brought it up during his speech to Congress, where he talked about the youth in India. He said India is an ancient nation with a youthful population. India is known for its tradition, but the younger generation is also making it a hub for technology, talking about, Indian know-how of these technologies. So the student issue, I think, is on the road to get resolved, but I think the issue of Indians coming and working in the United States is also going to be something that's going to be on the table, because he talked about how beneficial that is for the U.S. economy as well.